And then she saw him. At that moment, Ngozi shivered like she never before, like she had seen what she haven't seen for long in years. Pointing touched directly to the place that is never meant to say. "Ah, I love this," she said. "That's so massive."
A small village where everyone knows everyone, where secrets are currency and reputation is everything. In this village lived a man. Let's call him Papa Chidi. He was in his late 60s, a widower who had lost his wife years ago to an illness that came like a thief in the night. Papa Chidi had one son, his pride, his legacy, a brilliant young man named Emeka, who was away at university studying engineering. Emeka was everything a father could hope for: intelligent, respectful, ambitious. But here's the thing about ambition. It keeps you away from home. And Papa Chidi was alone. Completely alone. Imagine being in your 60s, waking up every morning to an empty house, cooking your own meals with trembling hands, fetching water from the well when your back screams in protest, washing your own clothes when your joints ache with every movement. The other elders in the village would see him struggling. They'd send their children to help, to sweep, to cook, to fetch. But it wasn't enough. It was charity, not companionship. It was help, not home. So the family gathered. Uncles, aunts, cousins, they all came together for a meeting. The solution seemed obvious. Papa Chidi needed a wife, not just for help, but for companionship, for warmth, for life. And that's when they found her. Her name was Ngozi. Ngozi was in her early 40s, and ladies, you know that this is when a woman truly comes into her power, don't you? She had lived, she had learned, she carried herself with a confidence that only comes from surviving life's storms. She was curvy in all the ways that made people turn their heads. Her skin was smooth, dark like polished mahogany. Her smile could light up a room, but there was something else in her eyes, a kind of sadness, a resignation, maybe. Ngozi had never been married. In a village where marriage was everything, she had remained single. Not because men didn't want her, oh, they did. But life had taken her on a different path. And now, at 40-something, she had accepted that motherhood might never be her story. When the family approached her, she didn't hesitate for long. Papa Chidi was kind, respected, and needed her. And perhaps she needed to be needed. The wedding was simple, traditional, and when they said their vows, you could see the genuine affection between them. This wasn't some arrangement of convenience. There was real tenderness there. Papa Chidi looked at Ngozi like she was a gift from heaven. And Ngozi, she threw herself into being the wife he needed. She cooked his favorite meals. She massaged his aching joints with warm oil and prayers. She sang while she worked, filling that empty house with life again. And when it came to Emeka, Papa Chidi's son, she treated him with such maternal warmth you'd never know they weren't blood. She sent him care packages at university. She called to check on him. She became, in every way that mattered, his mother. Everything was perfect. Until that one night. It was the middle of the semester when Emeka decided to come home for the weekend. He had called his father earlier that week to let him know, but somehow Ngozi never got the message. The heat that day was oppressive. You know that kind of heat, don't you? The kind that makes your clothes stick to your skin, that makes every breath feel like work, the kind that makes you do reckless things. Emeka arrived in the afternoon, exhausted from the journey. The house was quiet. Papachiti was at a meeting with the other elders, and Ngozi was in the parlor, stretched out on the couch, trying to escape the heat. She had dozed off in a light wrapper, the kind that women wear around the house when they think they're alone, the kind that shows the curves of hips, the dip of a waist, the rise and fall of breathing.
Emeka saw her there, sleeping. He didn't wake her. What would be the point? Instead, he dropped his bags quietly and decided to freshen up. But the house was stifling. The air was thick, humid, suffocating. So he did what anyone would do. He went to the backyard. Now picture this backyard. It was surrounded by tall fences, private, hidden from view. There was a well there, and beside it a small bathing area open to the sky. During the day, you'd never use it. But at night, under the moon and stars, with a gentle breeze finally breaking through the heat, it was perfect. Emeka stripped down to nothing. And ladies, let me tell you, university had been good to him. The boy who left home had returned a man. Broader shoulders, defined arms, the kind of physique that comes from playing football with friends and carrying textbooks up 4 flights of stairs every day. He poured the cool water over himself, and it ran down his skin in rivulets, catching the moonlight. He tilted his head back, eyes closed, just feeling alive, feeling free. Inside the house, Ngozi stirred awake. At first, she didn't know what woke her. Then she heard it, the splash of water, the unmistakable sound of someone bathing. Her heart jumped. Papachiti was at his meeting, so who? Fear crept in. Was it a thief? An intruder? She grabbed a torch, one of those heavy metal ones that doubles as a weapon. In her other hand, she picked up a cutlass from the kitchen. Her heart was pounding as she tiptoed to the back door. She opened it slowly. The hinges creaked. She stepped into the moonlight, raising the torch, and then he saw him. At that moment, Ngozi shivered like she never before, like she had seen what she haven't seen for long in years. Pointing torch directly to the place that is never meant to say, "Ah!" The torch beam cuts through the darkness and lands on skin. Wet, glistening skin. Water droplets catching the light like diamonds. The curve of muscle, the line of a strong back. Arms reaching up, pouring water overhead, every movement unconscious and natural, and so incredibly masculine. For a moment, just a moment, Ngozi forgot to breathe. Goosebumps all over her body. She got soaked with her natural juicy water in an instant. She felt her 20s again. Their eyes met. She saw his face, her stepson, her husband's child, and her breath cut. And he saw her, frozen, torch in one hand, cutlass in the other, eyes wide, lips parted in shock. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, it's you." Her voice was barely audible, shaky, confused. "I didn't know you were home." She should have turned away immediately. She knew that. But for 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, she didn't move, couldn't move, in shock of what her eyes might have seen that night. And he didn't either.
The moonlight painted everything silver. The night air carried the scent of the water, of soap, of something undefinable. The world seemed to hold its breath. For some minutes, Ngozi felt her younger self again, craving hard for what that would never happen. Then, suddenly she spun around and rushed back inside, her wrapper tangling around her legs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her chest. Emeka stood there, alone in the moonlight, equally shaken. What just happened? Later that night, after he had dressed and retreated to his room, Emeka lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. His mind was racing. He felt strange, confused, unsettled. It was just an accident, a misunderstanding, nothing more. Right? Then came the knock on his door. "Yes?" he called out, sitting up quickly. The door opened slowly. Ngozi stood there, now properly dressed in a long nightgown, her hair covered with a scarf. She looked composed, but she could see her hands fidgeting with the hem of her gown. "I came to apologize," she said softly, not quite meeting his eyes. "I didn't mean to startle you earlier. I didn't know you were home." "It's okay, Mama," he said, using the name he'd started calling her. "It was my fault. I should have announced myself when I arrived." She nodded, and there was silence, but not a comfortable silence. It was charged, heavy, full of things neither of them knew how to name.
She finally looked up at him, really looked at him. And he looked back. For just a second, maybe two, something passed between them. Not words, not intentions, just recognition. An acknowledgement of something that shouldn't exist. Ngozi's breath caught. Her eyes widened slightly. Then, without another word, she turned and left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Emeka sat there in the darkness, his heart pounding for reasons he didn't want to examine. The next morning, everything should have gone back to normal. But it didn't. Ngozi apologized again over breakfast. Too many apologies for such a simple mistake. Papa Chidi, oblivious and happy to have his son home, chatted about village news and upcoming harvest festivals. But under the table, Ngozi's leg bounced nervously, and across from her, Emeka pushed his food around his plate, barely eating. Days passed. The weekend visit stretched into a week because the university had a break. And during that week, things changed. Ngozi started dressing differently. Not dramatically, she was too careful for that. But there were small shifts. A blouse with a slightly lower neckline. A wrapper tied a little tighter around her waist, emphasizing her curves. Colors became brighter, vibrant yellows, deep reds, soft pinks. She wore perfume now, not the simple soap smell of before, but something floral and sweet that lingered in rooms after she left. Jasmine, maybe, or hibiscus, something that made you turn your head when she passed. Her hair, which she'd always kept simply wrapped, now peeked out in carefully styled braids. She smiled more, laughed louder, played music while cooking, not just gospel, but high life, Afrobeat, songs about love and desire and joy. Everyone in the house noticed. Papa Chidi beamed with pride. "Marriage has made you young again, my dear," he'd say, pulling her close for a kiss on the forehead. But Emeka knew better. He saw how her eyes would find him across rooms, how she'd bite her lower lip when she was deep in thought, how her hands would tremble slightly when she served his food.
And he noticed his own changes, too. He found himself watching her move through the house, the sway of her hips, the grace in her gestures. He'd catch himself thinking about the sound of her laugh. He'd lie awake at night, remembering that moment in the moonlight, replaying it over and over like a forbidden film. The silences between them grew longer, heavier. When their hands accidentally touched while passing a dish, both would pull back like they'd been burned. When their eyes met, neither could hold the gaze for more than a heartbeat. It was torture, beautiful, terrifying torture. One evening, Papa Chidi fell asleep early after dinner. Emeka was in the parlor, pretending to read a book. Ngozi was cleaning up in the kitchen, and he could hear her humming, a low, throaty melody that seemed to vibrate through the walls. Then she appeared in the doorway, wearing a lighter nightgown, one that could cause catastrophe. "Are you enjoying your book?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked up. She was backlit by the kitchen light, and it created a halo effect around her silhouette. He could see the outline of her body through her thin wrapper. "It's interesting," he managed to say, his voice rougher than intended. She walked closer, and he could smell that perfume again. She sat down on the chair across from him, not next to him, never that close, but near enough that he could see the rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. "You've grown so much," she said, her eyes studying his face. "When I first came here, you were still a boy. Now—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "You've changed too," he replied, his eyes holding hers. The air between them crackled. The silence stretched, full of words they couldn't say, confessions they couldn't make. "I should go check on your father," she said suddenly, standing up so quickly she almost stumbled. She left the room like she was fleeing, and Emeka sat there, his book forgotten, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. It couldn't continue like this. They both knew it. Ngozi started avoiding him. She'd wake up extra early to finish cooking before he came out of his room. She'd find excuses to visit neighbors during the times he was home. She'd retire to bed immediately after dinner. Emeka, for his part, started spending more time away from the house. He volunteered to help with community projects. He'd take long walks to the river. He'd visit old friends and stay out until late. They were running from each other, running from what neither dared to name. But fate had other plans. One morning, Papa Chidi didn't wake up at his usual time. When Ngozi went to check on him, she found him burning with fever, too weak to stand. The doctor was called immediately. After examining him, the diagnosis came. It was age, exhaustion, and a minor infection. Nothing life-threatening, but he needed rest and constant care. And Ngozi, she transformed. All the bright clothes disappeared. The perfume was forgotten. She wore simple wrappers and tied her hair back with no decoration. She became a woman on a mission, a wife devoted entirely to her husband's recovery. She cooked special soups. She administered medications on time, every time. She prayed over him, long, fervent prayers that came from somewhere deep within her soul. She slept in a chair beside his bed, waking at every sound to check on him. Emeka watched this transformation and felt something crack open in his chest. This was who she really was. Not the woman who'd worn bright colors and perfume. Not the figure in the moonlight that had haunted his dreams. This was Ngozi, devoted, selfless, strong. He began to help her. They took turns sitting with Papa Chidi. feeding him, reading to him. And during those long days and nights, something shifted between them. The tension didn't disappear, but it softened, transformed into something else, something like understanding. One evening, as they sat together by Papa Chidi's bedside, the old man finally sleeping peacefully after days of restlessness, Ngozi broke down. She wept, not prettily, but deeply, the kind of crying that comes from the soul. Her whole body shook with it. Emeka reached out instinctively and touched her shoulder. She didn't pull away. "God forgive me," she whispered through her tears. "I have allowed strange thoughts in my heart. I have looked where I shouldn't look. I have felt what I shouldn't feel. Forgive me, God. Forgive me." Emeka said nothing. What could he say? That he understood? That he felt it too? That they were both guilty of the same crime of feeling? Instead, he just sat there, his hand on her shoulder, letting her cry. And in that moment of shared confession, something broke. The fever between them, that dangerous, exciting, terrifying fever, finally snapped. From that night forward, Ngozi changed again. But this time, it was deliberate, intentional. She covered herself completely. She avoided any moment of closeness. She poured every ounce of her energy and affection into caring for Papa Chidi. And when the old man finally recovered, sitting up in bed with his old smile returning, Ngozi wept again, but this time with joy. She had chosen, and in choosing, she had saved them all. Months passed. Papa Chidi grew stronger. Emeka returned to university, and this time his visits home became less frequent. When he did come, everything seemed normal, peaceful. Ngozi welcomed him warmly, but kept her distance. They spoke politely, even affectionately, but carefully, like two people walking on glass, always aware of where they stepped. But one day, Emeka came home for a brief visit and found something on his bed. A letter, in Ngozi's handwriting. "My son, life sometimes tests us in ways we do not expect. That night changed me, not because of what I saw,
but because I realized how fragile a heart can be, how quickly we can lose our way if we're not vigilant. I want you to know that I will always care for your father. He is a good man, and he deserves all the love I can give him. And I will always wish you peace, success, and happiness. I ask one thing of you. Forget that night. Forget the confusion. Forget the moments we should never have shared. Remember me as the woman who cooked your favorite meals, who prayed for your success, who wanted nothing but the best for you. Not as the woman who, for a brief moment, lost her way. With all my love and prayers, Mama Ngozi." Emeka folded that letter carefully and kept it in a place where he'd never lose it. He never mentioned it to anyone, not to his friends, not to his father, not even years later to his own wife. He graduated with honors. He found a good job in the city. He built a life for himself. And years later, when Papa Chidi finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, Ngozi remained in the family home. She tended the garden. She fed the chickens and goats. She attended church every Sunday and became known as the woman who always had time to pray with those in need. Whenever Emeka visited, which he did
faithfully, several times a year. She welcomed him with warmth. She cooked for him. She asked about his work, his life, his children when they came. But she always maintained that careful distance, and he understood. He respected it. Sometimes their eyes would meet across the room, not with guilt anymore, not with desire, but with memory. A quiet, deep understanding of a moment that had once crossed the line between right and wrong. A shared secret that had tested them both, and that they had ultimately overcome. Because some feelings are meant to stay hidden. Some fires are meant to be extinguished before they destroy everything around them. And sometimes love isn't about what you do. It's about what you refuse to do.